Well, here we are on a Monday afternoon, and it's a beautiful afternoon, except that there's a wind that would cut you in two. And I guess it's even worse than Donegal. Is it, Pat? Check out the window
Well,
there.
Jude, it's always worse than Donegal. we're the part that's near the next parish is America, and the wind's always blowing here.
Yeah. You guys are always at the back of the queue.
Yeah, we're not at the back of the queue when it comes to windy weather, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we should be grateful. We haven't had really serious bad weather, and we're very lucky. And I just hope to God we get into March.
Yeah,
I suspect March will be a hell of a month, actually. Weather-wise,
I'll come on howling.
Yeah. Okay, let's move from the weather to important matters. There's a recent political opinion poll, been released by University of Liverpool, working hand in glove with the Irish News. And they report, the two headline things is that Sinn Féin are at 23.2% of first preference votes among decided voters, and the DUP are 19.4% among decided voters, first preference. Any comment on that, Pat?
Yeah, no, Jude, I'm like everybody else. I'm sitting waiting to see how this all actually plays out. But Sammy Wilson was on the Claire Byrne show, I think about a fortnight ago. It was a Friday morning, anyway, put it like that. And he was asked the very question, if Sinn Féin became top dogs, would they serve in as deputy first minister?
Yeah.
He wouldn't countenance answering the question at all. He said it's not going to happen. It strikes me that's in denial of reality. If the polls, unless they're all wrong, it seems quite clear, unless there's a last minute change in people's opinion, that Sinn Féin will be the largest party. Every poll so far is putting them to a varying degree. Now that one's closer than some of the rest of them.
It is closer.
20, I presume the DUP have clawed back some votes from the TUV over the collapsing of Stormont and the hard line.
Yes.
So that's probably
that's
probably worked for them. But having said that, Jude, even yet, Jude, the reality is if Sinn Féin, if the polls are right and Sinn Féin are top dogs and come out as the first minister, I will be interested to see, does democracy only work while unionists are dominant?
Well, I find it the most interesting thing about that, when they refuse, people like Sammy Wilson and, of course, the leader, Jeffrey, also a whole range of them, the leader of the UUP as well. They refuse to say they will serve as deputy first minister. But I honestly believe this. I don't think they themselves, in the end, if it happened that way, that they wouldn't serve as deputy first minister. But I think that they know if they say it, that their supporters will feel they've let them down. You know, that they're expecting the worst to happen. And if you're going into an election, you do have to, rally the troops and let them say to them, oh, well, the chances are we'll really do well this time. You can't go in. It's like a football game. You gotta summon up the blood and say, we're going to take this. But
in a way, it's very, I sort of feel sorry for unionism, but I don't feel sorry for the DUP. I say you're an ordinary, decent unionist, you must feel at the minute, look, everything's just going the one way. The days, the British government have shafted them. The demographics have shafted them. Their own, the stupidity of the DUP has landed them sort of up the creek without a paddle. And you sort of go, you sort of say, right, I can understand how, I'm talking about the ordinary people who are not bigots, who are not thugs, they just, I like being British, I like the system, and now what's going to happen? I can understand the fears of people like that. But the other side of the story, Jude, when I listen to the Sammy Wilsons of this world, you go, like, I have no sympathy for that sort of arrogance that, basically they're saying, unless we're dominant, the Catholics can like it or lump it, and even like last week, the report by the Ombudsman, like some of the attempts to explain collusion away, the arrogance and the sort of the dismissal of overwhelming evidence, you're going, wait a minute. Go ahead, sorry.
Maybe you're a wee bit hard there, Pat. The fact of the matter is, in my opinion, that all politicians, when they say anything, they always have an eye on, will this do well at the ballot box?
that's what I'm getting to. Yeah.
So I think Sammy's saying that, not so much that he really is necessarily, sees nationalists as beneath him. It's just that he knows that if he says that they'll serve as deputy first minister, it'll be bad news for the polls, for the voting booth. It's politics. It's politics rather than anything personal.
Yeah, but this sort of thing about curry my yogurt in regards to the Irish language. Well, absolutely no acceptance, anything Irish can exist. All that sort of stuff. Dude, I listened to John Kyle, Dr. John Kyle. He was on with Talkback on Friday. And the strange thing, here's a man, allegedly a loyalist. I was listening to him and I thought to myself, I could, who was it Margaret Thatcher or Ronnie Reagan said about Gorbachev? There's a man I could do business with. As I'm speaking as a nationalist and a firm believer in United Ireland, that somebody like John Kyle could sit down and sort of say, right, John, what do you need and what do I need on the future of this Ireland? And we could probably come to a reasonable compromise that would keep him happy and keep me happy.
Of course, John is the sort of the human face or the acceptable face of loyalism. I have a feeling he quit the
he quit what he
Progressive Unionist Party.
He quit Billy Hutchinson's party, but what he basically said the last day, the protocol, it's a big issue. And the point you always make, that it's if you were a unionist, you could see the difficulties, the constitutional thing that he says the exact same, but he says it could be ameliorated to almost.
Oh, you're frozen, Pat. You froze
as well. He says,
you say it again. Pat,
don't really think it's going to change.
Say it again, Pat. Start at the beginning because you froze there.
He said that it could be ameliorated. I'm paraphrasing, but it could be ameliorated to a way that it would be acceptable. And he accepted as well that the only way that the constitutional position of Northern Ireland is going to change is with a plebiscite. So I think what he was saying is this protocol thing's been overplayed. He wants it changed. I'm not saying he doesn't want to change. Of course he does. Yeah. But he said it's been over. But it's just one final point. I think you said it or somebody said the last, or I read it somewhere. Only 1 in 10 unionists think the protocol is a massive issue.
Exactly, Pat. Exactly, and that's I would say that's why people like the man that you mentioned, John Kyle, is saying what he's saying because they realise it's becoming less of an issue. If you even listen to Jeffrey now, he's talking about the protocol, but he's sort of saying he's not parking it, but there's less emphasis on it. It's more things like being British, etc. So I think they're moving to the point they have to accept that. I thought this opinion poll was interesting for two reasons. One was, the way the DUP was shrinking and it was being hemorrhaging to the right, to the TUV, and hemorrhaging to the left, to the Ulster Unionists and the Alliance. Well, now it's pretty clear that the hemorrhage to the right has stopped because the TUV is now on 6.4%. And the Alliance Party is doing very well. It's in 15.6%. So clearly the votes that left the DUP have stopped going to the right and they're going to the soft unionist alliance. And maybe Doug Beattie too. I'm not sure. What did they get? They got 14%.
They're 14. They're 14%.
Yeah, they're pretty close to the Alliance Party.
Yeah.
So I must say that struck me. The other thing that struck me was, my God, the SDLP got a very low count, 9.9%.
Yeah, 10%.
Because that means like the Sinn Féin are more than twice as popular.
Yeah.
What sort of a job do you think the SDLP are doing in Derry?
Colin Eastwood is a very Colin has become very impressive. He's very, very good. He's a very good media performer. But Jude, the old saying, it's the shadow or the substance. I think it happened in Northern Ireland. It reached the stage, and I remember talking to several British politicians. They both came to the conclusion, what was the point in talking to sort of human, somebody else? They may as well talk to Paisley and McGuinness, because that's really where it was at. And I think the SDLP has suffered with that. They're sort of, for a lot of people, when there's a real polarization, preaching this sort of milk and water nationalism. Look, we believe in nationalism, but it's not a big issue. And then, of course, on the other side, you know, the mirror image and the DUP and so on. Jude, I think that SDLP for a long time there, people were fed up with this sort of lack of, how would you say, milk and water. There was the SDLP sort of lost its way a lot. Nobody knew quite what it stood for. And in fact, half the time it seemed to see other politicians and the nationalist community more of an enemy than the unionists, and that didn't do them any favors. It's like Micheál Martin attacking Sinn Féin non-stop in the south. There's a guy in Donegal, a former senior, well, not senior, but he was a former high-ranking member in Donegal, resigned because he said he got fed up just listening to all Micheál Martin could do was attack Sinn Féin, and he said he was actually helping Sinn Féin grow.
Aye, but in Derry, like the SDLP have had a revival of sorts, haven't they?
Oh yeah, well, Sinn Féin lost the seat that was held by Lisa McKinnon. He lost it by 15,000 votes.
Yeah.
And Colm Eastwood, I have to say, I am impressed by Colm Eastwood. I think he's done very well since, and he's very. He was speaking in the House on the floor of the House of Commons the other day, and he was excellent.
Do you expect them to do well in well, just generally? Do you expect them to do just 9.9%, which strikes me as very low?
Well, you know, someone I'm not. There's Claire Hanna in Belfast is very good, and or the other girl whose name escapes me, Nicola Mallon's very good, and so. But they're a wee bit like the TUV. They don't have a massive pool of talent. Like they're the people they have are very good. There's a guy McCrossan and Strabane, Daniel McCrossan's very good, and the Matthew O'Toole as well, the big tall sort of red-haired guy. Yeah, you know, they're very good. But Jude, I think Colm is sort of trying to rebuild the party, and he's bringing in some new talent. Now, I think this election might be too early, and Jude, maybe it's too divisive, too partisan in Northern Ireland. For the sort of middle of the road Martin Luther King message they're sending out.
Well, just a final point, just say yes or no. Do you expect them to do better this time than they did the last time? You said that they got a majority of 15,000 votes for the MP.
That's
do you expect them to do that sort of as well as that, or
I think there's a revival. Now, how far it goes is another matter. And Sinn Féin, I think, lost a wee bit of a run of themselves. Well, particularly in this neck of the woods the last time. Sinn Féin had become very unpopular in the Derry area for a whole variety of reasons. Incompetence being one of them.
And you think that may stick? That might be the case during the election?
It might stick. All Sinn Féin needs was someone like Arlene Foster feeding the crocodile. And that just, that's Jerry Adams must have been clapping his hands in joy when she said that just automatically. And even people like me would have been out voting Sinn Féin and as many times as I could, even an impersonation just for a remark like that, which is it's so insulting and so you know it with yourself.
Well, okay, exciting times ahead then. Okay, let's move to this item you alerted me to. This question of flight bookings and expenditure. Now, are those bookings for it shows that there's been a big jump in the number of people in the south.
Absolutely, there's something like a 200% increase in flights booked in January, and
is that booking for the summer though?
Booking for this, no, and there's a 175% increase already in February. Everybody, and over 65, in other words, people who don't have to wait for their kids to come out of school, they're already going to places in the sun, and the prices are going up sky high. My wife was looking the other day. It used to be that you could get out of Belfast for about 50 quid, off season to somewhere in Spain. Just put another nut to it now, and that's what it's got seriously expensive. But it's the fact. The point I think I was making is, we have been so locked down for 2 or 3 years because of COVID. It seems now it's like the trap has been sprung, and now everybody wants out. And the fact that apparently every flight that's going anywhere is booked out.
Well, would that have any implications for the CO2 levels?
Well,
everybody thinks they forgot about that. This is part of the poisoning of the planet. And yet, people are saying, "Oh, great, we're back to normal. We're up in the skies and we're off for a hot place, warmest place." Are we maybe incapable of thinking about the two things at once? That all right, we have to look after ourselves and keep our mental health and have a holiday and so on. But at the same time, we've got to keep an eye on the global warming. Crisis.
Because my wife was very good at off season. We're both retired, and we could, if she saw flights, we used to go to Alicante and Torrevieja maybe twice a year, maybe sometimes 3 times a year on a very simple basis. You could get a flight out of Belfast. It was sometimes even cheaper than getting the bus to Dublin. And of course, Spain is a hell of a lot cheaper than a weekend in Dublin. A week in Spain still cheaper than a weekend in Dublin. So we used to do it off season because our kids are well grown up. But you won't be doing it now. The prices are astronomical.
Really? Yeah. My wife was looking at flights too, but I don't know. She didn't tell me what she saw. Anyway, but all age groups I gather are they're spending more on flights than was the case. I just be a bit concerned. I really would be quite seriously a bit concerned about that CO2 emission thing, because in a way it's like mask wearing. You can say, well, I mean, it's my right to wear a mask or not wear a mask, and it's my right to book a flight. If I want to book a flight, I know what I need. But at the rate, we're all tied in together, If I'm not wearing a mask.
I wasn't even thinking that altruistic way that you're thinking. I was thinking,
I'm naturally an altruistic guy.
You're not. Of course you are. No, I was just thinking it's very simple. There's another outworking of COVID. People wanting a holiday in the sun. Everybody just wants out. It's another example. When this is all over, the psychologists and the sociologists will have some great findings to tell us.
That's right. Well, they do say, in fact, what research have done so far, they say that kids' mental health has really suffered over the last 2 years because they've been, for you or me, sitting inside.
You froze there for about 10 seconds.
I'll say it again. For you or me, sitting inside might be a wee bit annoying, but if you were 16 or 12 or something, sitting inside it would be seriously bad. And they do say that kind of has taken a toll on an awful lot of youngsters over the last 2 years.
Judy, we were up in Letterkenny. My eldest granddaughter, she's 15, she's coming up 16 shortly. It's a lovely weekend. There was chat there. She hasn't been at a disco. She hasn't been out at anything. Just as she came into sort of 12, 13, COVID hit. And she says, Jude, it's tough being a teenager at the best of times. Imagine what it's been like for that cohort. It's very tough. Anyway, Jude, well, let's move on.
Okay. 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 I'm going to say that's another example of the need for us to put ourselves in other people's shoes. I mean, for youngsters, no wonder they sort of break the rules every so often, because it's just driving them nuts. And it would drive us nuts if we were their age. Okay. Eminem takes the knee. The Super Bowl was on yesterday. I remember watching the Super Bowl when I was in Canada. My God, the trick was to get your mates over and get a pack of beer, a big
slab of beer.
And you would be throwing it into you and watching the game. Actually, American football was very good. I was interested in it. They had a version of it in Canada called Canadian football. It was the same thing, essentially, with 1 or 2 tweaks. But anyway, Eminem, the famous rapper, I've never heard of him, but I know his name. He took the knee, as they say, during was it during the national anthem?
No, he took it during the halftime break. Dude, you know, it's a cultural war. He was performing, and you see the thing about it, white America's got a big problem. Trump really was annoyed about it. And remember, he called them BAST one time, and these bastards are showing disrespect for the American national anthem and all this sort of stuff, and taking the knee and so on. But Jude, it sort of died down until yesterday. I see there's a whole lot of controversy in the wake of it, that it's the culture wars in America. Jude, it's a simple. Trump represents white America, and the Democratic Party represents all others, and that's what's really outworking of what's happening at the minute. So, but this whole thing about the knee had died down until yesterday, and I see it's in all the papers again that Eminem took the knee. And Jude, when last week or the week before, I think the Republican National Congress had a big meeting, and they said what happened on the January 6th, with the storming of the Capitol building, was legitimate political discourse. So, Jude, if storming a building erecting a gallows, saying hang Mike Pence and hang Nancy Pelosi as legitimate political discourse. Jude, you can see why taking the knee about police brutality and about the treatment of black people. Jude, I think America is nearly on the verge of a sort of cleavage or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's riven down the middle.
Well, I was talking to. I mentioned to you before we came on air this guy Ezra Klein.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about him later, maybe if time. But the question is this not too easy? I sometimes think that, like, taking the knee, while sort of in general terms our theory is good, there's a danger that it become like guys who are very patriotic when they go to a football game, a GAA game, and they stand for Ireland of Vain. And then now I've been nationalist. Now I've done my bit for my country. I'll go back to being a useless blot on the landscape. There isn't a danger that Eminem will sort of virtue signaling, as they say now. That he says, look at me, I'm behind the backs, I got my foot in the I've took the knee for them.
Yeah, okay, and I accept that's a legitimate enough interpretation. But it wasn't an empty gesture by Colin Kaepernick, the guy who started. He was a starting quarterback on a huge salary. When he took the knee in 2016, he actually ended his career. Now he was blackballed by the owners. By the way, all the owners of the NFL are white. And at the start, they would threaten anybody who took a knee would be suspended or actually shipped off and whatever. So a lot of the black players, but the only thing is about it, white America has a big problem when it comes to sport. All the best runners are black. All the best basketball players are black. All the best American footballers are black. And white Americans might be okay in baseball. I'm not even sure about that. Mm-hmm. But, when they want to, the only thing, I suppose, the only game that white Americans dominate is golf. And even Tiger Woods
was that original guy who took the knee, the quarterback,
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, Kaepernick. Was he reinstated, or is he still?
No, he's basically gone. He was 27, 28, 29, wherever he was back then, and that's 6 years ago.
But he paid a high price. Well, you see, that's the thing. It was courageous. I mean, it was almost foolhardy, almost, I would say, if he lost his career.
A black man and white America are dominated, white dominated America.
Yeah,
and with the Proud Boys and the Ku Klux Klan and all sorts of racist and gun, like he was putting his personal security, and he was putting his life on the line to do it.
Mm-hmm. And it shades off. You see, this goes back so far. Do you remember? It was in the 60s. Where the guys, the sprinters in the Olympic Games were doing the
Tommy Smith and I can't remember. They never ran for America again.
And we're no further forward. But you said something there. This is because I want to go to this guy Ezra Klein that my son is alerted me to. You said that America's really, really riven.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy Ezra Klein is a youngish guy. He's in his late 30s, I think, and he's a sort of a bright Jewish commentator, and he does podcasts. He seems to do everything, but it's sort of like a version of Joe Brawley, if you can imagine that. Only, well, I would say even smarter, because Joe Brawley's no fool. He said in this interview with this kind of right-wing podcast guy, he said, we say things like America's never been so divided. He said that's not true. Look at American history, and we were far more divided. We say things like violence is terrible now. Violence was far, far worse in previous decades and certainly previous centuries. So we wouldn't want to, we make a mistake, I think, maybe by thinking America is more divided now than it ever was. It's just that it has taken a sort of a nasty form. It looks bad to us because we're enduring it, or, suffering the consequences of it. But there always was that. According to him, anyway, there always was really nasty stuff.
I know everybody's got a camera now, so we wouldn't have seen George Floyd, and we wouldn't have seen a whole lot of other things. Police shootings of black people. A hell of a lot of them. Remember what does he call him? Your man King, Rodney King was beaten. And all that. That was one of the first. But Jude, having said that, I accept the point, and he's probably right, and maybe 95% of it, in the sense that Jude, there wasn't the reason social media has made it almost much more immediate, we can all see it. And what was going on in the past was sort of, we wouldn't have seen George Floyd. We probably wouldn't even have read about it. The only reason it became a cause celeb was because it was actually up on social media and we could see what happened and everybody was outraged. But Jude, the other point where I disagree is, hey Jude, when was the last time you saw a mob try to overturn the Capitol building in America?
Well, that's true. Yes, that certainly was unique. One of that actually came up, I think, in that discussion that Klein had. Guy Ezra Klein, and I think he said something like, no, it wasn't that actually. It was Louis Theroux was talking to one of the guys who'd stormed the Capitol building.
Yeah.
And the guy says, you mean the protest that I was involved in? I said, it wasn't storming. It wasn't an effort to overthrow the government. You know, if you were doing an effort, and I always believe that if you're really serious about trying to overthrow the government, you wouldn't be going in as lightly armed as those guys were. Now, I know some people died, and I know it was really nasty, but it wasn't a serious attempt to overthrow the government.
No, I don't think it was a serious attempt to overthrow the government. Did not. But what I'm saying it was a serious attempt at, venting political anger and attempting to sort of impose your will on other people.
Yeah.
I don't think it was organized or orchestrated or sort of a planned insurrection, but it shows how deep the divisions and the hate in America are.
Yeah. Well, anyway, his point was, that they've been going on for some time. He also raised another point. Now, he was talking about blacks in America or people who weren't white. One of the things he said was by 2040, the majority of people in the States will be not white.
Yeah.
And that for, decades, centuries, the government and the people who control things were all white males. Now, if you look at the situation in Congress now, that's not the case.
Jude, you have to say that again. Jude, you froze there again. Say it again.
I'm just saying that the point Klein was making was that for centuries, white males dominated. And he's saying by 2040, there'll be a majority of non-whites in the US. And that there has been considerable change in recent years about that non-white. So that non-white grip is loose, or that white grip on things, male white grip is loosening. And once people begin to feel the power they once had been taken away from them, we know better than anybody, nasty stuff tends to happen.
Absolutely. Jude, I'm not going to name, but I have a friend in America and he comes over every so often. One year he brought several people over. One of them was a journalist from a certain newspaper. Halfway into the conversation, I realized your man was a bigot. He absolutely hated Obama. And I sort of got to it. He wasn't able to point to anything of significance. And I worked out basically, he was one of the old white Republicans. Now, I don't even know if he was a racist. He just hated the fact that the old white guys were losing control. He's been so used, mum, apple pie in Hollywood, that version of America that he had in his head, and he couldn't deal with the change.
Mm-hmm. Well, you see, maybe if you or I had been spent a lifetime as part of the white, dominant group, all the things that you thought were just the norm, you suddenly have been challenged and overturned. You'd feel very uneasy. Your sort of world's coming apart. It does take a degree of flexibility to be able to adjust to that. Now, I think there's a lesson for us in here in the north of Ireland that, we had unionist domination for so long. That's why it's very hard for some unionists to take the notion of equality or to take the notion of responding to democracy and accepting the role as deputy first minister or being expected to. I don't think actually the politicians are that sort of anti-democratic. I have a feeling they're scared that their voting base will react badly if they start saying, yes, I will serve as deputy first minister. But just a final point on this, and I thought it was very interesting. He was talking about positive discrimination in states where, there'll be a quota for certain jobs or whatever. And
Yeah.
so they had to have a certain number of women, certain number of, oh God knows what. The guy was saying, he was interviewing, was saying, this is ridiculous, you know, the best people aren't getting a fair shot at it. They're going for the job. They're better qualified for the job, but they're not getting it because they want to have include a black person. They want to include a trans person, or they want to include a woman or whatever. And he was saying that's not fair. The Klein guy was saying it's not fair now. You could see it right now. It's sort of not fair, but look at it this way. If we say everybody's going to get an equal shot, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be on talent and ability that you're hired. Yeah. The trouble is there are groups in society, like the black people in the States, like Catholics here, who traditionally haven't been part of the equal society, as it were.
Yeah.
They're in the back of the queue. So you have to get them somehow up level. And then you can start saying, we'll hire on talent, nothing else. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Frank Kern was the editor of the Derry Journal. He wrote a book somewhere in the 1980s called Countdown to the Disaster. And I remember reading on one of the lines in it that in 1962-63, 92% of the RUC were Protestant. Right, Jude? If you do not have positive discrimination, like look at it now, roughly, we'll just, for the sake of shorthand, we'll say the population now is 50% unionists, 50% nationalists. How under God, if you start, saying, right, there's no positive discrimination, but the best person for the job, how would the nationalist community ever catch up from such a super majority, the inbuilt majority that was created by discrimination and preferential treatment to the unionists for the first 100 years of the state? How could you possibly get around that? Even if they started Jude right now, it would take 100 years to maybe get to 10-15%.
Yeah. But again, think about it as your son or you yourself going for the job, and you're sitting there, and the guy beside you is going. He gets it, and he's not as well equipped as you are. It's very hard for you to take that long view and take that dispassionate sort of picture that, well, we really have to get these people into a position where they're fighting on equal terms.
I remember a Protestant RUC man years ago. He was being snobby or snippy about it. He says, "Hey Pat, the quickest route to success in Northern Ireland, be a Catholic and join the police force." He says, "You'll go up a ladder," he says, "so quick that he says, you don't even need the grease."
Well, you don't have any sympathy with that view.
No, I don't, Jude. Not at all. Jude, see, when there's inbuilt discrimination for a long, long time, and the only way to resolve it is positive discrimination. I'm saying that if you want a fair and equal society, if you want society that reflects the values of the communities in which police and people like that serve, you have to do something positive to achieve. Jude, right, let's even think of a minute. Say we did nothing in Northern Ireland about the Catholic position in policing. How long would it take, do you think, it would take for Catholics to be 50-50 in the police force?
You said a century, and I thought that was quite generous of you.
Exactly. And but then, hey, so in other words, you'll have guys from the Shankill Road down policing somewhere like Gallia, evermore, man. And Jude, how can that possibly be any sort of reflection of the society in which we all live?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But all I'm saying is it's hard medicine for somebody who's been part of that.
That's hard cheese, Jude. It's hard cheese for them. I have no sympathy for that at all. Yeah.
Supposing it was your son. Supposing you were a unionist.
Jude, I don't give a shit. I really genuinely don't. I think we really need to start. Positive discrimination is by no means a brilliant thing, but it's the least worst option.
And would you feel the same way about women, a quota of women?
Absolutely.
Say if you were in a political party, do you think all political parties should have a quota of women? There should be equal numbers of women. You froze, Pat. Say it again. You froze.
Maybe we're frozen together. No, Jude,
okay,
I believe political parties should go out of their way to encourage female representation. Women make up 51% of the population. Now, Jude, a lot of women
have a quota. That's a different thing saying, we'll encourage them. Would you have a quota? Should they all have a quota? Equal numbers.
No, I'm not sure about political parties, Jude, because there's a lot. It's not there's no discrimination in political parties. A lot of women don't want it because it's an odd life and you're away from your family and it's late night and it's functions. So I'm not so sure that that should work like that. But what I'm saying, political parties should go out of their way to facilitate women.
Well, there is a thing in the workforce for big organizations. I know, like, for example, universities, and I expect other things, with the exception of Catholic schools, incidentally. But they are supposed to have a balance of Catholics and Protestants on their workforce. And if they don't, they can be a real bother. So, there is positive discrimination going on. I just, women might be right to say, look, we've waited for a couple of 100 years before you're going to give us equal status in terms of, say, politics. I think there's a case to be made. If there's a case to be made for the police service, then there also is a case to be made for numbers.
I'm not going to argue. If it was deemed it was necessary to have a quota, bring on the quota. Now, I've seen examples in politics where, particularly quite recently in the South, where certain people were promoted simply because they're women into positions of power.
Yeah,
and I've actually heard other women saying that's disgraceful. So I am sort of the similar opinion. I'm not sure there's discrimination in political parties, dude. That's why I'm saying, in fact, I don't see the need for positive discrimination where no discrimination exists. If Margaret Thatcher was able to get to the top of the Conservative Party, which was totally male.
No, I don't buy that, Pat. Don't buy that any more than your man Obama solved the problem for blacks in the States. I think those are figureheads, and I think women still have a terribly tough time.
Absolutely.
The way in politics and in most aspects of life. Anyway, see the way I was currying favor with the gentler sex.
Jude, the woke Jude Campbell, or Jude Campbell was a man who used to live down the road.
I've always been known for that. Okay, right, Pat?
Jude.
That's it for another day. Okay,
that's it for tonight. Catch you later.